So it's been a few months since Andor Season 2 came to an end, and the final episode left us with some lingering questions, ones which Tony Gilroy has finally addressed in a brand new interview with GamesRadar.com. And the biggest one is what happened to the surviving characters. And in the second half of this video, my friends, I'm going to be sharing with you a very different kind of theory. But let's take a look at what Tony Gilroy said. We'll begin with the question of whether or not he wants to return to the galaxy far, far away. When Season 2 was airing, he was asked this question quite a bit, and his response back then was probably not, but let's wait and see. But now he's far more optimistic, and he names the one condition that would lure him back, and that is the prospect of returning to the UK and working in London again. He said this: "If you want to know the truth, that's the biggest temptation. London would be the bigger draw than even Star Wars itself." And look, I know he's not the biggest Star Wars fan, he loves the 5 years of the timeline he worked on, but aside from that, he's not the biggest Star Wars nerd. But you know, considering the quality he brings, the finesse and intricate level of storytelling, I hope this more positive response is a good sign of things to come. Because as we know for upcoming projects like Ahsoka, Starfighter, even the Rey movie, Lucasfilm is going to be working in the UK for many years to come. And so now onto the question of the fates of the surviving characters. Does he want to see them return in a different Star Wars story? He wrote the characters up until the end of Season 2. His creative priority wasn't thinking about the future. But now he says this: "I guess I would feel great if it was great. So essentially, if the story warrants it, and it's a great story, then it should be done." He says, "I've seen it done before with things that I've been a part of, where it's been a total corruption of everything that you were trying to do, and the whole thing's violated. So if it's great, fantastic. If it sucks, then I'll probably hate it more than anybody else." And he's right. Don't force these characters into future projects if it doesn't do those characters justice. Don't undermine their sacrifices and their arcs from Andor. And this is basically in line with what I've seen a lot of fans say. Every time I've brought up these kind of theories in the past, people say, we don't need to know what happens to them. Not every character needs a conclusion. And I do agree to some extent. I definitely believe that if they're going to do it, they should do it right. But at the same time, avoiding them doesn't make much sense. Given how presumably significant these characters are to both the Alliance and maybe further down the line, the New Republic, letting them fade into the background or pretending they don't exist doesn't do them justice. But he's right. If they do it, those stories should be well thought out and deliberate. And in light of all of this, I want to return to a topic I spoke about just after Andor came to an end. At this point, you've heard me break down several theories about the likes of Vel, Kleya, and Wilmon. But today, I have a fresh new theory for you. One which, in light of what we know in canon, and also we're going to touch upon some Legends material, is more tangible than even I initially thought. I suppose the problem with certain characters surviving the show is the inevitable question of their whereabouts during the original trilogy. Of course, there's a lot happening off screen, the Rebel Alliance is bigger than we realise, and they can easily fill in the blanks in books, comics, and make allusions to these characters in future shows. But for this video, we're going to take the example of Kleya Marquis, one of my absolute favourites, the last survivor of the Axis group, one of the crucial people delivering the information about the first Death Star to the Alliance on Yavin, and someone who keeps Luthen Rail's legacy alive. Where is she later on? Some say she became a special ops advisor. Maybe she was part of the intelligence unit or a comms officer for some of the rebellion's most crucial battles. We've even spoken about the theory that she might be Torren Farr, and my personal favourite is the most unfounded one, just based on a similar smile. But whoever Kleya becomes after Andor, she is an enormous asset to the Rebels. And I want to talk about the one specific role I think she played in one of the most important original trilogy missions. And due to her involvement uncovering what was going on with the first Death Star, there's an incredible poetry to it, because this one involves the Death Star too. I reckon Kleya was in direct contact with the Bothan spy network. Even if Palpatine intentionally leaked his plans in Return of the Jedi, I wouldn't be surprised if Kleya was part of the intelligence operation to obtain the info mentioned by Mon Mothma in Episode 6.
Many Bothans died to bring us this information.
And one of the reasons Kleya would fit so well into this mission is so little is known in official Disney canon. The entire operation is well documented across various legend sources, Return of the Jedi's novelization, X-Wing Izzard's Revenge, and of course, Shadows of the Empire. Let's go through the differences between the Legends version and the canon version of events. In both instances, Palpatine wanted the rebels to attack the second Death Star while it was still operational. He wanted to crush the rebel fleet in one strike and lure Luke into a confrontation. The plans were leaked through the Bothans, because Palpatine relied on their allegiance to the rebel cause. In the expanded universe, Palpatine goes through Black Sun's Prince Shizor, and in canon, it's a combination of 2 Crimson Dawn agents who inform Luke, who then informs Mon Mothma. At first, Rebel High Command didn't believe them, but then, when they received further information from the Bothan spy net, they learnt about the location of the second Death Star and its presumed vulnerability. But aside from broad strokes, specific canon details about this mission are unknown. And there is a theory following the recent Star Wars comic run, the 2020 Star Wars comics, that we don't know if it was leaked on purpose by Palpatine in the first place, or if the rebellion got the information, he found out about it, ramped up production and called in the fleet to make it a trap. Claiming it was a trap all along to encourage feelings of hopelessness and desperation would feed into his effort to turn Luke to the dark side. And, if that's the case, maybe some of the information was thanks to Kleya's work, or her cell working alongside Bothan Spynet. Maybe Kleya's work with the Bothans predates the Andor campaign. Perhaps she was part of recruitment and training. And if she had her own intelligence cell, she could have been one of the first to sound the alarm about rumors of a second Death Star. Like I say, poetic, in light of her being fundamental in discovering Project Stardust. Those are just some pretty loose, unfounded theories, just some thoughts I had. According to Tony Gilroy though, her story ended where it needed to. She wakes up with a smile, she sees what Luthen's sacrifice has led to, and the hope for a new day. But what's going on in her head is anyone's guess. Does she stay? Does she leave? Does she sit out the war, and then after recovery she decides to go after remnants? Because the last time I brought up this same topic, there was a bit of disagreement over the premise that Kleya would be part of the rebellion at all. Even though she was transported to Yavin and was saved by Cassian, some fans feel as though she wouldn't have stayed. Maybe she would have had some ideological clashes with the likes of Mon Mothma, and others believe becoming an intelligence officer is beneath her station. For example, this person says, I just can't see her becoming part of the Rebel Alliance. She and Luthen are too much of a lone wolf style operation. I imagine her sort of sitting out the war, but then afterwards becoming a Simon Wiesenthal type figure, hunting down ex-Empire figures in hiding. And to be fair, this idea touches upon something that Tony Gilroy approves of. Those who are in favour of this theory say, considering she was part of Axis, being the ears of the operation in hiding, the alliance to restore the Republic is way too mainstream and way too organised. But here's my problem. I don't know if Kleya would literally sit out the war. There's a massive difference with her being a private investigator, running her own operations unit, feeding information to the rebellion while being separate, and literally doing nothing until the age of the New Republic, just waiting for another rebel victory and for the Empire to collapse. She isn't the type to sit on the sidelines, even if much of her work was very covert. After watching the destruction of the first Death Star, I reckon she probably went back to the fight with a renewed sense of energy. The destruction of the first Death Star validated Luthen's sacrifice, and she would feel a drive and obligation to carry on. Even if she disagreed with Alliance leadership, she still would have fought in the name of rebellion. But regardless of if she was involved with Hoth or Andor, I think it's safe to say that Vel, Clara and Wilmon were part of the Celebration throne room scene in A New Hope. My headcanon is that they were part of the onlooking soldiers, watching Luke, Han, and not Chewie receive their medals, taking credit for the explosion of the first Death Star, the victory of the Battle of Yavin, but, as we know from watching Andor and Rogue One, all the unnamed rebels, many of whom are forgotten, are a reminder of the amount of sacrifice and arduous struggle it took for such a victory. So, hopefully one day, Lucasfilm returns to this question, but I want to know what you guys think. Share your thoughts in the comments down below, my dear friends. And if you enjoyed this one, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and may the Force be with you, always.